Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be taking out the Suzuki Strom 250. But before we do, roll the credits. Okay, first thing we notice when we approach the bike, it's a nice, compact, small looking, adventure style motorbike. I know it looks pretty personal, but I think it looks quite nice. It looks quite quirky with the big headlight on the front. It doesn't look too imposing, it doesn't look threatening. Seems as though it's not going to be much of a handful to ride. So for a new rider it would inspire confidence. The seat height is really low as well. When I get onto the bike I can easily just step over. I don't have to step onto the foot peg. I have a 34-inch inside leg. The foot pegs are surprisingly high on this bike, with it being such a low bike. I would say your heel is just in front of your spine, which really forces your legs forward in a tucked up position. You're in a very upright sitting stance. I think anybody with legs with longer reach than 34-inch inside leg are really going to struggle and feel cramped on this bike. The seat is absolutely terrible. I don't know whether it's because it's too hard or the shape of the seat or the combination, but it's one of the worst seats I've ever come across on a motorcycle, which is a real shame because I do like riding this motorcycle and it really does intrude on the ride experience. It does make the bike uncomfortable to ride. The handlebars are quite narrow for an adventure style bike. However, you know, they don't feel out of place on this bike because the bike is quite compact anyway. When you're sitting on the bike, the handlebars feel at a good height. They feel naturally situated on the bike as though that's where they should be. However, when you stand up on the bike you find that they are too low, especially because the foot pegs are so high that you find yourself stooped forward, leaning over. You're putting a lot of weight on the front wheel and you don't really feel comfortable or in control of the bike when you're standing up on it. The front brake is span adjustable, nice and easy to reach. The clutch, however, is not span adjustable, but it's not overly too far forward. It's quite easy. Anybody with small hands would easily be able to reach that clutch. The clutch is nice and light. It's got a nice light movement to it, no problems there. The switch gear is it looks fine. It doesn't look high quality, but at the same time it isn't cheap. It is sturdy. You do get good tactile feedback from the switches when you activate the switches. The screen is very small and doesn't offer a lot of wind protection. You do get a lot of turbulence air off this bike. Reaching down and switching on the ignition, we have a white on black LCD screen and I really like that. I do like the white on black. I think it's easy to see in all kinds of riding conditions, day and night. It's very clear, easy set out. You've got the rev counter along the top, you have your miles per hour on the left, you have the time, a big gear indicator, you have trip A, trip B and mileometer, and you also have a fuel gauge. There's no riding modes at all on this bike. It's just got ABS and that's about it. But then again, you know, this is a budget bike. It's not an expensive bike, so I suppose you can't expect too much. The mirrors on the bike, the mirrors are fine. They're nice and big. The way that they're set out, I would say most probably just over a quarter to half of the mirrors. I can see my shoulders, but beyond that I can see behind me no problem. They don't vibrate, they don't work loose, so they are good, quite quality mirrors. Okay, let's start the bike up and let's take her for a ride. Okay, the suspension on the bike feels quite firm over the bumps. It's not over firm, it doesn't rattle the teeth out of your head, but it does feel quite firm for an adventure type style bike. You would expect it to be a little bit more plush, soaking the bumps and the potholes up. However, it's not too bad. The clutch is nice and nice, the gearbox is lovely. The gearbox is absolutely silky smooth. You get a nice, very subtle click as it goes into the gears. However, one thing I can say about the gearbox, although it is silky smooth once you've got some revs on the clock and you're actually moving along, when you come to a standstill and you're at very low revs or very low speed, it can become quite stiff trying to get down in between second and first, and it can be difficult also sometimes to find neutral on this bike, which is, it's surprising because, like I say, once you get past walking speed and you get a few revs on the clock, there's no problem at all with the gearbox. Sitting on the bike, you feel definitely as though you're sitting on top of the bike. It's not a bike where you feel as though you're sitting low in the frame with a high tank. You do feel on top of the bike. It's quite a strange feeling because although the bike feels really compact, you feel quite tucked up at the high pegs and the low seat, but when you look in front of you there seems to be a lot of real estate in between you and the front wheel. It seems to reach out a long way forward in front of you. It's sort of contradictory to what the bike actually is. The engine feels really nice and smooth. It really is silky smooth. It's very buzzy, but it's a high frequency buzz. It's like an angry little wasp. I do like riding this bike. It's just a shame that the seat is so hard, and I haven't come across any aftermarket products for this seat. I have tried an Airhawk seat pad on, but even with that it tends to slide around quite a bit on top of the seat, and it still gets uncomfy after about 45 minutes. The maximum time I like to spend on this bike is no longer than sort of half an hour, 40 minutes, absolutely maximum, because my legs do feel cramped up. They're bent at a really acute oblique angle, so your legs get uncomfortable, and like I say, I don't know whether it's the seating position that you're pushed into or whether it's the seat. It's just painful to ride on this seat for any long length of time. The bike turns really well. There's no weight to it at all with being a 250. It just absolutely falls into the corners. You don't have to give any input whatsoever to try and make it turn. It will turn when and as you want it to. The brakes are nice. The brakes, they have a good bite to them. They're more than adequate for this bike. When you pull the front brake, as you can see, there is some dive. The back brake doesn't set the wheel on fire. It's very spongy, but it's good on wet and cold slippery roads. When you want a little bit of tail braking, you know, you've got the confidence that back wheel isn't going to lock up and wash out from underneath you and spin you off or side you. The brakes are very linear on the front as well. The minute you start to squeeze them, you do get an initial bite straight away. It's not like some bikes where you pull the front brake and for that first couple of millimetres you don't really get any feedback. With these you do get feedback straight away. It's nice and progressive. It does feel natural to the bike. The actual braking action feels natural as well. Again, like I say, some bikes you ride, you have to actually strangle the front brake before you get any sense of braking through the front wheel, whereas these, it feels natural. The minute you start to apply the brake, the more pressure you build on the front brake is relative to the amount of braking that you feel through the front wheel, and I like that in a bike. I can't be doing with these bikes where you pull the front wheel, pull the front brake, and you know it's like a delayed action, or you feel as though you're over pulling the brake for how much stopping power you're getting. Those sort of bikes never inspire confidence in me, especially when riding in winter through really rough weather, you know, the cold, horrible wet roads. We're doing 52 miles an hour now, and I'm getting quite a bit of turbulence around my head. the faster I go, you can most probably hear it on the helmet. It does become quite turbulent. Up to about 50, it's not too bad. It's almost like clean air hitting the helmet, but the faster you go, the more turbulent it does get. The headlights on the bike are pretty poor. I don't think they're LED bulbs, they're just normal bulbs, and looking at the size of the headlight you would imagine that it's going to be, you know, a really good headlight, but in fact it's not. It doesn't light the road up very good at all. We don't use this bike very often. This was the first biggish bike my wife had after she passed the test, just to get an eye in and to get used to things riding on her own without an instructor or anybody there to give her confidence. But she really loves the bike. We were going to sell it and just buy a bigger one, but in the end she decided she wanted to keep it for the simple fact that it is so easy to manage. You know, it's very easy to get on and off the centre stand. It's nice and light for pushing around and manoeuvring on car parks, and it's just a great thing to get out the garage if you want to nip down the local shops, or just go for a nice summer afternoon ride like we are today, you know, just for an hour or so. Other than the seat, it's a really nice bike, and to be fair, my wife doesn't find the seat as uncomfortable as mine, as I do. Like I say, I don't know whether that's down to physique, weight, or she's a lot lighter than me, obviously. I don't know what it is, but for me personally, this seat is absolutely horrendous. I'm sorry to keep harking on about it, but you have to experience it to believe it. The delivery of power is really nice. As I say, it's a really buzzy engine. It's like an angry little wasp when you ride it, and you can have fun through the twisties on this bike. You are limited somewhat with the suspension. The suspension is quite firm, but at the same time it gets unsettled really easy. It sort of goes, once you get it past its maximum that it can handle, it becomes unsettled. It bounces around, so as you're coming into bends, if you're coming in hard and you brake hard, the front end does dive quite a bit, and then, you know, as you're going through the bend and you release the brake and you're accelerating out hard, it sort of emphasises almost like a bounce as you go through the bends. So it can be quite easy to get offline on this bike if you're riding past your own ability, or pushing the bike further than it's actually designed to do. However, you know, if you keep within the limitations of the bike, you can still have fun, you can still make good progress on the bike. I think this bike really is aimed at somebody who just wants a little run around, you know, a little hack that they can use in the week or through the winter as well. You know, it's a good bike to have in the winter because there's not a great deal of power there. You're not going to get yourself in a lot of trouble on icy roads where it's light, it's easy to pick up if you do drop it. So, you know, if you're after a weekly run around, this bike is excellent. It's got good aftermarket product, you know, that there's plenty of luggage. We've got the Suzuki luggage on this with a Givy, the top box on, and you know, you can nip down the shops, put all your shopping in there, and it's fine, it's excellent. As for riding with a pillion, I've never tried it and I wouldn't want to try it, to tell you the truth. I think that if you put a pillion on this bike, the suspension just wouldn't cope with it. It wouldn't cope with the weight. I think it would be really horrendous riding this bike two up. But, you know, don't take my word for it because I haven't tried it. I'm just sort of surmising from riding it with a one-up rider. The tyres on this bike, I'm not sure what the tyres are. I know they're a make that I've never ever heard of. But to be honest, I was quite suspect of them when I first saw it, and I'd never heard of them make. I thought, I think we're going to have to change those out sooner as we can. But to be honest, this bike's been rode through winter, and it's never, you know, just through the tyres giving out, it's never stepped out of line. It's never, the front's never felt as though it was tucking, or the back end's stepping out of line. It's coped really well in all conditions, both hot, cold, wet, icy. So you know, as long as you want a brand snob, I don't see any reason that you need to change the tyres on this bike. The exhaust note is very subdued. There's no character to it at all. It's not raspy. It's just a muffled drone. It doesn't bother me because this type of bike, why would you want anything else on it? You're not going to be using it for bombing around the country lanes and pressing anybody. You know, I just can't see any need to go to the expense and changing the exhaust on this bike for me personally. I suppose, you know, if you're a younger rider and this bike's your pride of joy, then yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out. I don't know, I've never even looked to see if there are any aftermarket exhausts for this bike. I should imagine there are. There seems to be aftermarket exhaust for every bike nowadays. We'll just open her up a little bit and go through the twisties. Oh, gravel. That's another thing, we're just on the English side of the Scottish borders. Now that the lockdown's been relaxed, just look at that beautiful countryside. It is absolutely stunning. But like I said, as you saw back there, when you ride out in the countryside, if you're not used to it, just adapt your riding technique. You know, here you can see again, there's debris on the road. Every time you go past the field entrance, 9 times out of 10 there's been a tractor that's come out and dragged debris all over the road. If it's been raining, that then becomes really slidey because it's like a slick layer of mud on top of the road. They also like to redress the roads with stone chippings a lot out in the countryside, and the stone chippings tend to pile up at the side of the road, so if you get a bit wide on your line and you get a wheel on them, they will have you off. It's really loose stuff. They build up at junctions, they build on the inside of corners. It's normally on the line that you would choose when you're cutting through a bend. We have wildlife that can come out straight from the side of the hedge, birds that swoop down. A lot of the stuff that you don't normally see when riding in urban areas, you get it on every ride that you go out on when you're in the countryside. So, you know, just adapt your riding skills. You know, if you're going into the bends and you're overcommitting and there's only one line that you can take at that speed, then really you're asking for trouble. Whenever I go into a bend, even when I'm having fun and you know, I'm riding spirited, I never overcommit. I can always change my line at the last minute. And I did a road review, a road test on the Benelli TRK 502X that I own, and I was discussing this in that video, and just as I was discussing it, a bird flew out of the edge and nearly collided with the bike, and I had to change my line mid-corner. And it just proves what I say, that you have to be so careful when riding on these backcountry roads out in the countryside. But don't let that put you off. It is fun, you know. There's no traffic, you've got absolutely beautiful countryside. So if ever you want an amazing place to come and ride, you know, everybody thinks of the Peak District and the Lake District and around that sort of area of the country. You've only got to go a few miles further north and you're in the Scottish borders. You can stay on the English side so that you're within the law. And I mean, just look at the countryside. You know, even when the lockdown isn't on and we're down to normal, once you get off the beaten track and you get on these back roads, it's very rare that you see a lot of traffic. You never see traffic jams. The only times you'll come across traffic is, you know, if you're on the main holiday routes, and then obviously you will get your holiday makers with the caravans and camper vans, and on the trunk roads, the big A roads, you'll get all your vans and lorries. But there are hundreds of miles of road like this where you can ride all day long without, you know, seeing virtually any other traffic. We're so lucky to live out here, and I think that it is one area for motorbikes that a lot of people don't naturally think of. But if you do come, you know, please respect the little villages. It's okay experiencing the thrill of your bike and riding your bike to its capacity within reason and within the law, obviously. But you know, when you do come to these little villages, you know, slow it down, stay in the speed limit, show some respect, and then it keeps everybody happy. I'll say this up here, the road users are very courteous towards motorbikes. They'll 9 times out of 10 they'll always give way to you and let you through if the roads are narrow. Great difference, you know. I don't wish to tarnish any particular area of the country, but I have rode in other parts of the country where that isn't so, and I've had some near misses and I've seen some dreadful driving by car drivers where it's been concerned with motorbikes. You don't get that up there. Obviously you get it occasionally, you know, but on the whole everybody is pretty respectful of each other in the Scottish borders. So what about touring on this bike? Well, at the end of the day you can tour on any bike you want to tour on. I mean, when I was younger I was a mad mod and we went hundreds and hundreds of miles on Vespa scooters, Lambretta scooters. The Lambrettas were pushed for most of the way, sorry boys. But you know, so you can tour on anything you want, and I think that as long as you weren't a really tall guy or ladette, and you could do something with the seat, or if the seat didn't bother you that much, this would be a comfortable bike to travel on. I don't think it's really suited to motorway riding. Sort of the top end of this bike is around about 80 mile an hour. So it's 70, you know, you are really pushing it to its maximum. 60-65 feels the sweet spot on this bike, but again, I think if you were doing that all day long with the vibration and with the turbulence from the screen, it may be a bit tiring. But I think if you were doing the sort of touring, as I said, perhaps around the Lake District, or you know, the Scottish Highlands or the Scottish borders, somewhere where you're on a lot of A roads and that there's not a great deal of motorway or dual carriageway riding, then you'd be fine on this bike. Again, I wouldn't pack it with a lot of weight. As you can see here, there's lots of debris on the road there on that bend. Yeah, I wouldn't overpack it with a lot of weight. It will carry weight, no problems, but again, it's down to the suspension. I haven't actually looked to see whether the suspension is adjustable. I've got a feeling that it's adjustable for preload on the back only, but don't quote me on that. I'll put something up on the screen when I get back, when I've had a look. And to be honest, I haven't altered the suspension on this bike, so maybe we could dial the suspension in a little bit, make it a little bit more usable. So perhaps I am being a bit over the top when I keep mentioning the suspension. Maybe we could do something, but there's nothing you can do with the front suspension at all. There is a lot of dive on that front suspension when you brake hard, and I think that is the main problem. That is what is unsettling the bike when you're riding spirited into bends and into corners. Okay, we'll give it some power through the gears. And that is 60. So as you can see, you know, it's not blindingly fast. You haven't got a great deal of acceleration there. It never feels as though it's pushing you back into the seat or pulling your arms out of its sockets. You know, it is what it is. You can't go on about the power. At the end of the day, it's only a 250cc, but at the same time, it's totally usable for nearly all things. For a weekend trip, for shopping, for commuting, not a problem at all. There are a lot of aftermarket accessories for this bike. I've got the Suzuki bars fitted. I've put aftermarket or the manufacturer spotlights on just to help with the poor headlights. It came with the Suzuki side panniers. As I said, we've got a Gibby top on. I've got Oxford handlebar hand covers on here, and I've also got an Oxford hot grips. I think what I will do is I will go through all the accessories and do a separate video on that, what they're like to fit, how good they are, where to get them from and how much. I've also got other bikes that I've done that for at the moment. I've got one on there for the Benelli TRK 502X, all the accessories on there. I'm in the process of editing one for the Honda NC 750X DCT, and I will get around to filming one for this bike as well, and I'll put all the accessories on there. The bike also has a centre stand. I'm not sure whether that's standard on this bike. I doubt it. Most bikes you have to buy that as an option. But you know, centre stand really, especially on a bike like this, you need it for oiling the chain because it is chain driven. So that is a short review on the Suzuki V-Strom 250. Leave me your thoughts in the comments. If there's anything you want to know about the bike, just let me know. I never go into facts and figures on my videos. I'm just not a great big believer in them, you know, oh, this bike's got, you know, 3 horsepower more than that bike. A lot of the time the facts and figures don't tell the true story of the bike. You get some bikes that people say, oh, look how heavy they are and they're underpowered for the weight, and then you get on the bike and the weight disappears over walking distance, and you know, and it feels a nice zippy bike, you know. So I don't go into it. It's not for me. There are loads of other sites and other channels that go into all the technical stuff, you know, brake disc size and newton meters of torque and all that. I just don't do that. I prefer to just get on the bike and see what it feels like. And with that as well, with these reviews, including mine, please take them with a pinch of salt, because we're all different. You know, what I like today you might get on tomorrow and absolutely hate, and vice versa. You know, if we all like the same thing, the world would be a very bland place. So, you know, if you're thinking of a bike, get out there, get on the bike, give it a test ride yourself and see what it's like. And if you are in the market for buying, don't just test the bike that you've really got your heart set on. You know, test some of the other bikes in the same field. You know, if you're after a 600, then test 2 or 3 different 600cc bikes, and you know, you may surprise yourself and find one that wasn't really on your radar, and you find that you really like it and it suits you better, and it saves you wasting your money on something that, you know, wouldn't have really suited you. So anyway, I've waffled on for long enough now. I keep mentioning my channel, please subscribe. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. It just puts a little icon on your channel so you can find my channel easier every time you come on YouTube. There's loads of stuff on there: product reviews, bike reviews, walk around videos, road tests, you name it. And I've got lots and lots more coming up. If there's anything you'd like me to cover, please ask me, and I will do my best within reason to do a little video on it. Well, that's me done. I've waffled on long enough. I hope you've liked the video. Don't forget, likes, you know, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and all that's left to say is everybody ride safe. Bike Rider Reviews out.